Hey there, it's Kat and this is Brews and Reviews. In today's video, I'm going to be going through the books that I read in February 2022. So this is a wrap-up of all of the things that I picked up, read, enjoyed, and also didn't enjoy. At the beginning of the year, I set myself a target of reading 13 books a month, and I just achieved that. By the skin of my teeth, I achieved that because I finished the last book with about 2 hours left of February. So I did it! I still did it! I read 9 audiobooks, 3 ebooks, and 1 physical book. I gave 1 2-star, 6 3-stars, 3 4-stars, and 3 5-stars. So my ratings were kind of all over the place, so let's get straight into this. The first book that I picked up in February was The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This book is a sort of sci-fi dystopian set on a world where men's thoughts can be heard out loud, so anything that they think can be heard in this thing called the noise, but women cannot be heard. And our main character is a young boy called Todd who finds a girl. And then it sort of goes from there. Now, I rated this book 2 stars. I will get that out of the way with now, and I appreciate that not everyone's gonna really like my review of this book, because I think Patrick Ness and this book is quite beloved to quite a lot of people, and this is just my opinion. I completely get it if you don't agree with it. I thought the concept was really interesting, and there were aspects of it that I did really like. Not a massive fan of like the just huge trail of abuse that goes through it, particularly towards animals. But really this book did sit at a solid 3 stars for me until one particular incident happened, and it is a spoiler. Now I don't want to go into too much detail about the incident that caused me to downgrade it to a 2-star, because it's quite a big spoiler. It would be a big spoiler to me, but I would really have liked to have known going into this book that this thing happened, because I don't think I would have read it if I'd known that. If you don't want any spoilers at all for this, skip until I put my hand down, okay? There is an animal death that happens in this book that I just found really horrific, and as soon as it happened, I was like, fuck you, book, fuck you, and it really pissed me off, it really upset me, and made me cry. So fuck that. But also, the worst thing about it is that that particular animal had basically been abused the entire book. It was so friendly and loving, and I was like, somebody just love on this animal, please. I think Todd's a bit of a dick in regards to this particular animal, and yeah, fuck him. I'm just really angry about that one thing. Apart from that, I would say this book is alright. I am not interested in continuing with the series. I didn't particularly like what happened at the end, and I'm just really mad about the thing. And we're not going to talk about it anymore because I'm just sad about it. I have the next 2 books in the series. I'm not going to read them, so it looks like I'm probably going to be unhauling this trilogy. So the next 3 books that I read were actually from the same series, and I finished the series off, and I'm so happy that I did. The books that I'm talking about are Unsold, Undivided, and Unbound by Neil Shusterman. This is book 3, this is book 4. Technically, that is the end of the series, but Unbound is a set of short stories that happens sort of throughout the series, and some of it happens after Undivided, so you do get a little bit of context for what happens to people that you may have only sort of briefly known throughout the series, and people who obviously followed throughout the whole thing. I personally have a lot of opinions about this. The first book in this series is Unwind, and it's set in a dystopian world in which kids up to the age of 18 can be sort of genetically dismembered and become organ donors against their will if their parents decide that they should be. So it's twisted, fucked up, and personally I think this series really shines when it gets a little bit more fucked up, and I feel like, yeah, that's what humanity would do if they had the ability to do this sort of thing. So let's take this one book at a time. Unsold, book 3. This book I didn't love. Now the problem I had with this book is it felt like a traveling book. It felt like pretty much the entire purpose of this book was to get characters moving around the world and being like, oh, this person has to be in this place with this person. And everyone was traveling, but not much actually happened of substance, and I really feel like book 3 and book 2 could have been pushed together, and some of these things could have happened, and it would have been a lot tighter and a lot better as a series as a whole. Now that being said, Undivided was a really good end to the series. I was really happy with this. I wasn't really sure what I was expecting Undivided to do, because I know a lot of people have really mixed feelings about The Toll and how that ended the side series. So I was like, how's this one gonna be? But I really loved the end. It definitely went on like a few more fucked up things happening in this one, and I was really happy with that because it just felt more realistic. And honestly, I just felt really satisfied by the ending. Unbound, I think, was a great conclusion because there were stories of people that we had sort of experienced the whole journey with and sort of gone along the whole way with. And there were stories of things that were happening in other parts of the world that were even more twisted. There were like creepy doctors experimenting on children and stuff, and it was fucked up. It was really badly fucked up, but so interesting to read, and I felt like I kind of wanted the whole series to go a little bit more down that route, because that just feels like something that would have happened if this reality existed. It just feels like some people would be able to go, oh, well, we can take all the parts of a child, so why can't we do this other stuff with it? Like, why shouldn't we do all this other stuff? Why not? So I feel like it's more interesting to go into the whole what the fuck aspect of it, because it just became bizarre in certain parts, and I liked it when it did that. But yeah, I really ended up enjoying the series as a whole, and I'm really glad that I read it. I would recommend it, but if you do struggle with book 2 or 3, get past it, because book 4 and 5 really good again. I gave Unsold 3 stars, I gave Undivided 5 stars, and I gave Unbound 4 stars. The next book that I read was Ruin by Jolie Vines. Essentially this book is about some Scottish teenage boys who get kidnapped and taken to an island in Scotland. I say boys, they're like older teenagers, almost men. I think the main character guy is 21, but there are some younger guys in it as well. It was supposed to be kind of enemies to lovers romance. It was a lot darker than I expected it to be, and it was super far-fetched at times. The whole prospect of these guys being kidnapped and taken to an island, and all the people on the island being totally okay with that, was just like, what? This is not believable. Anyway, the main character, the lady herself, was a wet towel. She was just the worst. She had no personality, and she just was, ugh. Anyway, it did have some interesting points to it, and I think that I would definitely be interested in reading the next book in the series, because the characters that focuses on were way more interesting than the characters that this one focused on. Also, it was supposed to be like a dark romance sort of thing, and it was just barely sexy at all. Barely any of that happened. It was mostly about kidnapped guys. It was a bit of a weird book, but I think that was partly tempered by the fact that I was expecting it to be more romancy, and it just wasn't. Next up I read This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Mokhtar and Max Gladstone, and I fucking love this book. I have been putting this one off for ages, don't know why. It's so very short, but it is a beautifully written, sapphic, sci-fi, time-bending love story, and it's just fantastic. And if you've not read it, then you really fucking should, because it's so beautiful, and it had me in tears at the end. I was like, I just fucking loved it. If you don't even like sci-fi, but you do just want to read a really beautifully written sort of time-traveling tale, just read it. Please read it. I can't talk about this one enough, because I loved it. Oh, they're pen pals. I forgot to say they're pen pals. They're on opposite sides of a war, and they leave each other notes throughout time, and it's so good. The next book I read was Dangerous by Nora Ash. This one was just on my Kindle. Shirtless man, mafia, romance story. I wasn't sure what to expect when I picked it up, except for, you know, shirtless man, mafia, romance. And it was fine. Very average. I'm not gonna lie, I've definitely kind of forgotten most of the plot by now. I think it was very surface level, and I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't for me. It did not make a dent in my brain at all, so it's gone. Next up I read How to Hang a Witch by Adriana Mather, and this is a YA contemporary urban fantasy sort of thing set in Salem, and it's about the descendants of the Salem witch trials. It's a little bit Mean Girls, it's a little bit like teen bullying, and the main character is really fucking annoying. And I did almost put the book down for about the first half of it, and then I started to get more interesting when more magical things started to happen. The beginning was a struggle. I like the suggestion that the Salem witch trials were essentially just bullying and mob mentality. I like the end. It was a fine end. I don't think it really sort of stuck with me, but I will say that this book did get one thing over on me. It kept dropping hints that this one person was the big bad, in the book. And I was like, it's this person, oh my god, you're so stupid. How can you not see that it's very obviously this person? And it wasn't. And I just admitted that to the internet, that I was so determined it was this one person, because I thought, it can't be this other person, because that's far too fucking obvious. It has to be this person, because that's just slightly less obvious, but it's definitely them, and it was the first person. So definitely pulled the wool over my eyes there, and I will give it credit for that, because I was dumb. I give it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I decided to reread Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a post-apocalyptic world in which most of the world has flooded, and we follow Maggie, who is a monster hunter, and there are monsters of various different types. There are Navajo gods. Just so many cool things that happen in this book. Now, this is a reread for me. I first read it about 2 years ago, and I struggled with the first 150-ish pages. And then I really loved it by the end, so I was determined to reread it and sort of see what I thought. I don't know what I was thinking the first time I read this book, because there are no pacing issues in this book. Like, none whatsoever. When I was reading it, I was like, why did I think that there were pacing issues? It's just really good the whole way through, and I just got really confused about my own thoughts originally when I was reading this. Anyway, I really loved it. It was great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which is the same rating I gave it originally, but I would say this is like a much higher 4 stars. I think it just made it into 4 stars last time because of like the second half of the book, but now the whole book is a 4 stars for me, and like a very high 4 stars. So I'm really looking forward to reading the second book in the series. Next up, I picked up The Old Guard, Tales Through Time. Now, The Old Guard is a graphic novel series about some warriors that can't die. And they're just a group that go through time, and every time they get shot and stuff and stabbed, they heal. They just can't die. So Tales Through Time is just a set of short stories, like snippets throughout their lives, and you see them in different time periods. For me, this was really good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. There was not enough Nikki and Joe together, because I just love them and I would like more of them all the time, always. My favourite short story in this collection was Nikki and Joe in Germany. I just really liked that one. And yeah, definitely recommend picking this one up if you like the Old Guard main series. This is just like snippets outside of that. Then I picked up Blood Standard by Laird Barron. This is a book that I did think was a horror book, and I'm not sure why I thought that. I think it's because Laird Barron is a horror writer typically. This is more like a crime noir book, which definitely hurt me going into the story, because I was expecting crime going into horror, and I just didn't get any horror in this. This was very noir detective, and it disappointed me in that aspect. So there are some really good things in this book. We follow this Maori mafia hitman who has just sort of gone away from the life because he decided that he wasn't a fan of the illegal poaching that he saw the people he was working for go into, and he killed them all because he was like, don't you fucking hurt animals, mate. And then almost died for it. So he ends up in a town sort of out of the way, and somebody goes missing, and the whole book is him trying to find this person that went missing. It's kind of a little bit too detective, I will hunt this person down, but there's like no leads really, it just goes from place to place. There's a lot of casual racism. There are a couple of uses of the N-word with a hard R in this, which I didn't love, and there's also like, I think, neo-Nazis in here, and there is animal death and animal abuse. And that's aside from what I've already mentioned. So there is multiple instances of animal abuse in this and animal death. And the only reason that I could sort of get through that is because the main character absolutely batters and murders them straight after they do it because they've done that. And I'm like, well, justice, okay? So I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars, and I was quite disappointed by it. It was definitely too much noir for my tastes. Then next up I read A Vow of Lust and Fury by L.P. Lovell. Oh, this is also part 1, which I didn't realise when I picked this book up. Great, love it. Part 1. Part 2 isn't out yet, of course. I actually ended up really enjoying this book and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Oh no! I have fallen for the dark romance, enemies to lovers, slightly forced marriage. That they don't actually get forced marriage in this one, but there's like that trope. And I just really liked it with a mafia romance. And I think the difference between this one and the one I read earlier on in the month is that this guy actually felt like he could be in the mafia and probably killed a lot of people, and he was not a nice man. But I kind of like that morally grey, villainy kind of guys in this sort of setting. So it kind of worked. Oh, it also had the who hurt you trope, and I'm just like, all the tropes. I'm not even going to try it and justify it. I just enjoyed it, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed it. So So the last book that I read in March was Law by Alexandra Bracken, and I did this as a buddy read with Kayla from Crack It to a Good Book. And it's really funny because this book was such a ride. I started off this book really loving it, and me and Kayla were so excited to read it, and then as each of the chapters went on, we just sort of went, it's not quite, it was very disappointing, quite anticlimactic, I found. It started off so promising and I was really there for it, and then it just didn't do what I wanted it to do. So this book is set in a world where Zeus decided to punish the Greek gods, and he did it by sort of creating this competition where every 7 years the descendants of the great heroes and their houses could hunt down the gods and take their powers. It's sort of like a competition book. I mean, I love competitions, but I just didn't feel like the competition aspect was really a part of it. I felt like a lot of things were quite obvious, but my main issue with this book is that it felt a little bit like we were going on side quests all the time. It was like the main plot of the book is this one thing, but we got distracted and we went over here. Oh, we got distracted and we went over here. We've got to see this person about this thing first before we can... Oh, there's a villain in this, isn't there? It was just a little bit too all over the place, and I don't feel like the main big bad was really that big or bad. He just wasn't in it very much. I was disappointed by that because it kind of just lessened the impact that that character could have had. I felt like they were a creepy person and they had quite a lot of power. They could have been really antagonistic, and then they just kind of went. So it was a bit disappointing. I was a bit disappointed by various other characters that popped in and popped out really quickly because they didn't really make any impact at all. And it was sad because I really wanted to enjoy that one. And while I did enjoy aspects of it, I just don't think that it was tight enough, and I don't think that the story was quite focused enough for me, and that is the main problem I had with the book. So I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. So there we have it. Those are the books that I read in February. So if you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought. I would really be interested in having a discussion about them. And if you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!